My CEO girlfriend would never have imagined this in her wildest dreams. She was just in a bad mood and wanted to threaten me with a breakup so I'd lower my head and coax her. But I nodded without hesitation and agreed. She froze. Then she emphasized it again. "Didn't you hear me?" I said. "We're breaking up." To show that I understood, I went straight to HR and submitted my resignation letter. She panicked, thinking about how to win me back. But what she never expected even more was that, the very next day, I showed up at her company again. I explained calmly, "A breakup is a breakup. Work is work. It's not easy to find a job these days. Gotta make money. Nothing embarrassing about that." Chapter 1. When Willow said we should break up, I was crouching beside the ergonomic chair in her office, gripping a screwdriver. The chair had been squeaking lately. She said it was affecting her mood at work. "George, let's break up." She stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, backlit. Her ash-gray custom suit outlined her figure, sharp and coldly elegant. "I'm bored." As she spoke, she casually picked up a black card from her desk, held it between two fingers, and tossed it at me like a scrap of paper. It flipped twice in the air before landing on the floor beside my knee with a soft tap. I was still holding the oil-stained screwdriver, my fingertips slightly cold. I looked up at her. Outside, the CBD skyline glittered like scattered diamonds. She stood in that light like an ice sculpture, not even her eyelashes moving. "Okay," I said. "Just one word." She paused. Not hesitation, but failure to process. Like a finely tuned machine suddenly jammed by a loose screw, its rhythm thrown off for a beat. She turned to look at me. In those almond-shaped eyes that always carried frost, for the first time, I saw an emotion I could understand. Shock. "Didn't you hear me?" Her voice rose slightly. I said, "We're breaking up." I put the screwdriver back into the toolbox, closed the lid, and wiped the grease off my fingers with a rag. "I heard you," I said. "You said you're bored." I said, "I get it." Her lips moved, as if she wanted to say something, but she swallowed it back down. She went silent for a few seconds, then gestured toward the black card on the floor with her chin. "Take that card. Consider it compensation." I glanced at it. It was Willow's secondary card. I didn't know the limit, but it was definitely enough for someone like me, an IT guy earning $8,000 a month, to coast for years. I didn't pick it up. No need. I stood up and brushed non-existent dust off my pants. "I'll move back to my own place. I'll leave tonight." Willow's expression darkened instantly. She walked over to the sofa and sat down, crossing her legs, her fingers tapping rhythmically on her knee. That was her habit when she was unhappy. I'd been with her for a year. I knew it too well. "George Wong." She called my full name, her voice dropping a few degrees. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." I didn't say anything else. I turned and walked out of the office. The moment the door closed behind me, I heard something slam against the wall inside. Maybe it was that crystal glass. Maybe it was her work phone. I wasn't sure, and I didn't turn back. My workstation was on the 12th floor, tucked away in the corner of the IT department, a desk barely 80 centimeters wide, an old desktop computer, a mug, and a dying pothos plant. I'd been sitting there for 2 years, after I got together with Willow. She once asked if I wanted to move upstairs and become her personal assistant. I said no, the IT department was fine. Looking back, that was probably the first time she was unhappy. While I was packing my things, David leaned over from the next desk and lowered his voice. "George, what's going on?" "I'm resigning," I said. "Huh? Why so sudden?" "Not sudden." I stuffed my mug and the pothos into a cardboard box. "Should have done it a long time ago." David opened his mouth, then didn't ask any further. He'd been here for years, he'd seen it all. What was going on between Willow and me? There wasn't a single person in the Orange Group who didn't know. The female CEO and the IT guy. What a perfect piece of gossip. Chapter 2. By the time I left the company, it was already dark. The July night breeze carried a wave of heat as it hit my face. Holding a cardboard box, I stood at the entrance of the office building and looked back at the 42-story glass tower. The words Orange Group glowed at the top in a cold white light. I withdrew my gaze and called a ride. From Willow's luxury apartment to my rented room in the urban village, it was a 40-minute drive. I took my suitcase and the box out of the trunk, climbed up to the 5th floor, and opened the peeling security door. 30 square meters, 1 room, 1 bathroom. Rent, $1,200 a month. The paint on the wall corners was damp and peeling, and the air carried a faint musty smell. I opened the window to let in some air, set the box on the table, and turned on my computer. There were 47 games sitting in my Steam library, more than half of them I had never even launched. During the year I was with Willow, my total playtime didn't exceed 20 hours. Any demand of hers, I had to respond immediately. Working overtime until midnight, I had to cook her a late-night meal. Car broke down, I had to fix it overnight. Anything at home malfunctioning, I was on call anytime. I wasn't her boyfriend. I was her personal repairman, nanny, and emotional dumping ground. I opened Elden Ring, cranked the graphics to max, ordered some barbecue takeout, and popped open an ice-cold Coke. The smoky aroma of grilled skewers mixed with the fizz of cola bursting on my tongue when the bold red words "you died" lit up on the screen. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long breath. No heartbreak, no tears, just a sense of relief, light and unburdened. My phone lit up, a message from the company group chat. I tapped it open. Someone had posted anonymously. Heard that George from IT got dumped by President Lou. The chat went silent for 3 seconds, then exploded. Seriously? I knew it. That kind of relationship could never last. Sigh. George is a good guy. What a pity. What pity. He got to sleep with the female CEO. Worth it already. I muted the chat and turned off my screen. Outside the window, I could hear the clattering of mahjong tiles from the parlor downstairs. The couple next door was arguing again. In the alley, stray cats wailed like crying babies. These sounds used to feel annoying. Now, they somehow felt familiar, almost comforting. I rolled up my sleeves, finished the last skewer of lamb, and kept playing. At 2 in the morning, while I was getting utterly destroyed by the Valkyrie, my phone vibrated. A message from Willow. You left a few things at my place. I replied with one word. Throw them away. Then I blocked her. Smooth. Effortless. All in one motion, just as decisive as when she tossed that black card. Only after blocking her did I realize that the corner of my mouth had lifted at some point. Damn, that felt good. Chapter 3. The day after the breakup, I went to work as usual. Yes, I didn't resign yesterday. When I carried that box and left, I was planning to quit, but after sleeping on it, I thought it through. Why should I be the one to leave? I didn't do anything wrong, so I arrived at the company at 7:50, swiped my card, went upstairs, sat back down at my 80-centimeter wide desk, turned on my computer, and started handling the unfinished tickets from yesterday. When David saw me, his eyes nearly popped out. Aren't you resigning? I smiled. Thought about it. Why quit when I haven't found another job? I took a sip of my instant coffee. Jobs aren't easy to come by these days. David gave me a look like I was playing with fire, shook his head, and said nothing more. At 10 in the morning, I took my chipped mug to the pantry to get some water. The pantry was on the 16th floor, the same floor as Willow Lou's office. I wasn't doing it on purpose. The water dispenser on the IT floor was broken, and maintenance said it wouldn't be fixed until the afternoon. The pantry door was slightly ajar. As I reached the entrance, I heard voices inside. Someone said, President Lou looked awful today. She ripped Sam from marketing apart in the morning meeting. Not just Sam, Lisa from finance got scolded too. Said her report looked like elementary school homework. Did you notice? President Lou is wearing sunglasses today. So what? She even wore them during the meeting, never took them off. Her eyes must be swollen from crying. A brief silence. Then a burst of suppressed giggles. Could it be because of that George from IT? What else? I heard after George left her office yesterday, she smashed quite a few things. TSK, the female CEO trapped by love. Come on. It's just her not being used to it yet. Think about it, if you raise a dog for a year and it suddenly runs off, you'd feel bad for a couple of days too. I pushed the door open. The pantry instantly fell silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. 3 female employees stood there holding their cups, their expressions like thieves caught red-handed, faces flushing from red to pale. I didn't look at them. I walked straight to the coffee machine and pressed the button. Coffee dripped steadily into my mug, its aroma spreading through the air. The 3 of them slipped out behind me like guilty fugitives. The last one even nearly tripped over the threshold on her way out. I turned around with my coffee and leaned against the counter, sipping slowly. Sunlight streamed in through the window, spreading brightly across the floor. As I drank, the pantry door opened again. This time, it was Willow. She wasn't wearing sunglasses. Her eyes were indeed a little swollen. Her tailored black suit dress outlined her slender waist, and the 10-centimeter heels made her look like a blade drawn from its sheath. The moment she saw me, her steps faltered slightly. Then she walked in as if nothing had happened, picked up a cup, and went to the coffee machine. From start to finish, she didn't look at me. I didn't look at her either. I kept drinking my coffee. The pantry was so quiet that only the low hum of the coffee machine remained. Her coffee was ready. She took a sip, and immediately frowned. Too bitter, she said. It sounded like she was talking to herself, or to me. I didn't respond. She set the cup down and finally turned to look at me. The bloodshot veins in her almond eyes were clear, the redness at the corners not fully faded. George, she said softly, you blocked me. Yeah, why? We broke up. If I don't block you, what? Keep you around for the holidays. She took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling. I saw her fingers gripping the cup handle tighten slightly, the knuckles turning pale. She said, your things, just throw them away. I cut her off. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Something swirled in her eyes, but she forced it back. Fine, she said. Then she turned, stepped away in her high heels, and left without looking back. She didn't take another sip of the coffee. I looked at the abandoned cup, the dark brown surface covered with a thin layer of foam, slowly breaking apart. Back then, whenever she drank coffee, I would prepare it 10 minutes in advance, just the right temperature. 1½ spoons of sugar, 1/3 milk. She had a picky taste, even the slightest difference, and she wouldn't drink it. I finished my own coffee, rinsed the mug clean, and went back to the 12th floor. Chapter 4. In the afternoon, an all-staff email was sent through the company's internal system. The sender was Willow. The content read, effective immediately. Instant coffee will no longer be provided in the pantry. It will be replaced with freshly ground coffee machines. Please be informed. I finished reading the email, closed the page, and continued typing my code. Tony from the next desk leaned over and lowered his voice. George, what do you think President Liu means by this? Instant coffee's always been free, why switch to fresh ground all of a sudden? No idea, I said. Tony leaned in even closer, looking all mysterious. I heard President Liu took one sip of coffee in the pantry today and just left it there. Think she found instant coffee too disgusting? Maybe. He looked baffled. But freshly ground coffee is expensive. Since when is President Liu this generous? I didn't answer. My fingers kept tapping rapidly on the keyboard. Only I knew. What Willow disliked wasn't the bitterness of instant coffee. What she disliked was that the coffee hadn't been made by George. At 6 in the evening, I got off work on time. As I walked out of the office building, I saw Willow Liu's silver-gray Maybach parked at the entrance. The car window was half open. Her profile bathed in the glow of the setting sun, like a silent statue. I didn't slow down. I walked straight toward the subway station. Behind me, I heard the car door open and close, followed by the low hum of the engine starting. I didn't turn back. The subway was packed. I was carried forward by the crowd, tapping my card. Heading down the stairs, waiting for the train, my phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. George, are you really just leaving like this? I looked at it for 2 seconds, deleted it, and blocked the number. Clean and efficient. One smooth motion. The train pulled into the station. Wind rushing through and lifting my hair. I stepped inside, leaned against the handrail by the door, and closed my eyes. A scene suddenly flashed through my mind. A year ago, the same station, the same train car. That day, I had worked overtime until midnight. For once, Willow said she would drive me home. I refused. I said I'd take the subway. She stood at the entrance of the office building, watching me walk toward the station. Then suddenly, she called out, George. I turned back. She stood under the lights of that 42-story glass tower, backlit, her expression impossible to read. See you tomorrow, she said. See you tomorrow. That was probably the gentlest she had ever been to me in that entire year. The train arrived at my stop. I opened my eyes and stepped out. The platform was crowded, the advertisement lights glaring. I quickened my pace, left the station, and walked into the narrow alley of the urban village. The clatter of mahjong tiles, the arguing couple, the stray cats crying. I got home, turned on my computer, and continued gaming. When the bold red "You died" appeared on the screen again, I put down the controller, picked up my phone, opened a job app, and started browsing listings. After half an hour, I sent out 3 resumes, then turned off the lights and went to sleep. No dreams. Day 3 after the breakup. Work, code, lunch, code, off work. Day 4. Same routine. Day 5. Friday. In the afternoon, my desk phone rang. George, come upstairs. It was Willow. What is it? I asked. There was a brief silence on the other end before she said, the chair is squeaking again. Chapter 5. Willow's office was on the 42nd floor. The entire floor held only her office and a meeting room. The corridor was covered with dark gray carpet, silent underfoot. I stood at her office door and raised my hand to knock. Come in. I pushed the door open. Willow sat in her executive chair. A stack of documents spread out before her, a fountain pen held between her fingers. Today she was wearing a white silk blouse, one button undone at the collar, revealing a hint of her collarbone. Her hair was loosely tied behind her head, a few strands falling by her ears. No makeup, or rather, very light makeup. I walked in and stopped in front of her desk. Where's the chair making noise? I asked. She didn't look up, still reading the documents. She pointed under the chair with her pen. Listen yourself. I was silent for 3 seconds. The chair wasn't making any noise at all. She was sitting there perfectly still. What sound could there be? I don't hear anything, I said. She finally looked up. There was something in her almond-shaped eyes that I couldn't quite read. Crouch down and listen, she said. I looked at her, unmoving. She looked back at me. The office was so quiet that only the hum of the central air conditioning could be heard. In the end, I moved first. I walked around behind her chair, crouched down, and pretended to inspect the base and screws. In truth, there was nothing wrong. I had just fixed this chair the day we broke up. The screws tightened firmly, the wheels lubricated. It would stay silent for at least half a year. No problem, I said as I stood up. brushing off my hands. You probably misheard. I didn't, she said. Then it's your imagination. Her expression shifted slightly. The pen dragged across the paper, leaving a long streak of ink. George Wang. She called my full name, her voice low. Any other instructions? President Liu, I asked. Do you have to talk to me like this? How should I talk? Then, I looked straight into her eyes. President Liu, teach me. Her eyes reddened instantly. Just for a moment, the redness spread at the corners like ink bleeding through paper. She lowered her head, closed the file, her voice hoarse. Nothing. You can go. I turned and walked out. Just as I reached the door, her voice came from behind me. George, are you really not sad at all? My hand was already on the doorknob. Somewhere in the corridor, someone walked past. Leather shoes pressed softly against the carpet, making dull, muted sounds. I turned back and looked at her. She sat behind that wide desk, the setting sun casting a golden hue over her profile. Something in her eyes had shattered, completely beyond repair. Willow Liu. I said her full name for the first time. You're the one who said you were bored. The door closed behind me. The corridor was empty, the dark gray carpet stretching to the end. Sunlight poured in from the window at the far end, dragging my shadow long across the floor. I didn't take the elevator. I walked down the stairs to the 12th floor. The stairwell was quiet, only my footsteps echoed, one after another, like a heartbeat. When I reached the 20th floor, I stopped, leaned against the wall, and closed my eyes. Her expression from just now filled my mind, the way the light in her eyes shattered, the way she forced herself not to cry. I took a deep breath, opened my eyes, and continued walking down. Back at my desk, David leaned over and handed me a cigarette. Want one? I took it and followed him to the stairwell. David had been at Orange Group for over a decade, a seasoned veteran of the IT department. He lit his cigarette, took a drag, and exhaled a cloud of smoke. George, let me give you some advice, he said. Either cut it off clean, or don't hold back. Staying stuck in between like this, you're the one who suffers. I lit mine and said nothing. That President Liu, yeah, she's proud, and her temper's not great. David flicked the ash, but she really does care about you. Think about it. How does an IT guy like you get to walk in and out of the CEO's office for a whole year? You think everyone else is blind? David, I said after taking a drag, she's the one who brought up the breakup. When a woman says break up, 9 times out of 10, she doesn't mean it. David shook his head. She just wants you to coax her. But you, she says break up. You say okay. You didn't follow the script at all. I couldn't help but laugh. David frowned. What are you laughing at? I'm serious. He stubbed his cigarette out in the ashtray. If you really didn't care, why are you laughing? The smile on my face slowly faded. David, it's not that I don't care. I crushed my cigarette out as well. It's because I care too much that I can't afford to. Chapter 6. After work, I didn't go straight home. Instead, I went to a street-side food stall near the company. I ordered stir-fried shrimp, grilled eggplant, 3 chicken wings, and a bottle of beer. Halfway through eating, my phone rang. It was Willow, the number I had blocked. I didn't pick up. It rang again. Still didn't pick up. The third time, I answered. George. Her voice was thick with tears, and there was obvious drunkenness in it. Where are you? Have you been drinking? I asked. I'm asking where you are. The background was noisy, music, people talking. It sounded like a bar. Where are you drinking? I asked. Why do you care where I'm drinking? Her voice got louder and louder. George, didn't you stop caring about me? Didn't you block me? Then why are you answering the phone? I said. Put someone next to you on the phone. I won't. Willow. No, no, no. There was a crashing sound on the other end, followed by her startled cry, and then the busy tone. I stared at the call ended on my screen for 3 seconds. Then I stood up, paid the bill, and called a ride. I knew where she was. During the year we were together, every time she was in a bad mood, she went to that bar. Top floor of Guomao Tower 3. Membership only. Minimum spending at a booth was 5 digits. When I arrived at the entrance, a security guard stopped me, glanced at my t-shirt and jeans, and said, Sir, this is a members only. I'm here to find someone. I cut him off. I walked past him and pushed open the glass door. The music was deafening, the lights dark as ink. I searched the booth area for a while, and finally spotted her in a corner. Willow leaned against the sofa. 3 empty bottles sat on the table in front of her. Her white silk blouse was wrinkled, her hair messy, her makeup mostly smudged. A man in a suit sat beside her, attentively pouring her another drink, his hand casually drifting toward her shoulder. I walked over and brushed his hand away. Who the hell are you? The man stood up, half a head taller than me. I ignored him and looked down at Willow. She lifted her head, her eyes hazy with drunkenness. She stared at me for a few seconds, then her eyes instantly reddened. George, get up. I'm taking you home, I said. She obediently stood up, but her body swayed, collapsing straight into me. I caught her, the strong smell of alcohol mixed with her perfume filling the air. The men blocked my way. Hey, she's my friend. Who are you? Her boyfriend, I said. The willow in my arm stiffened at that word, then held onto me even tighter. The men glanced between her and me, snorted, and walked off unwillingly. I helped Willow out of the bar, called a car, and got her into the back seat. She leaned against my shoulder, her burning face pressed to my neck, her breath heavy with alcohol. George, she murmured drowsily. You just said, you're my boyfriend. Drunk talk. Don't take it seriously. You're lying. Her voice trembled with tears. You are my boyfriend. You said so. You said you'd always fix my chair. The driver glanced at us through the rearview mirror, then quietly raised the partition. I didn't say anything. Streetlights slid past outside the window, shadows flickering across her face. George, I was wrong. She buried her face in my chest, her voice muffled. I shouldn't have said that. I was never bored. I just wanted to see if you'd try to keep me. You're always like this, I said calmly. You never say what you want. You expect others to guess. If they guess wrong, you get mad. If they guess right, you're still not happy. She lifted her head to look at me, her eyes red, tears clinging to her lashes. Then I'll say it now, she said. I don't want you to leave. Can you not go? The car turned a corner, the streetlight sweeping across her face. No, I said. Her tears fell all at once. Chapter 7. The car stopped at the entrance of her residential complex. I helped her out and handed her over to the security guard. Take her upstairs, I said. George. She shook off the guard's hand and staggered toward me. Don't go. I stepped back. Willow, you're drunk. When you wake up tomorrow, you'll still be the high and mighty President Lou, and I'll still be George from IT. She bit her lip. Then I won't be President Lou anymore. Okay, she almost shouted. I don't want the company. I don't want the money. I don't want anything. Just come back. Okay. The night wind blew, messing up her hair. She stood under the streetlight at the entrance, her makeup ruined, clothes wrinkled. One of her high heels was gone, and she stood barefoot on one foot. That Willow, so untouchable, so cold and sharp, now looked as miserable as a drenched stray cat. I looked at her, silent for a long time. Go home, I said. Then I turned and disappeared into the night. Behind me, her crying broke into fragments in the wind, like shattered glass. I didn't look back. Saturday morning, I was woken up by knocking. Not knocking, pounding. George, open the door. I rolled over and covered my head with a pillow. The banging lasted about 5 minutes before it stopped. Just as I thought she'd left, my phone started vibrating. Unknown number. I blocked one. She switched to another, like a game of whack-a-mole. Eventually, I picked up. Come downstairs. Willow's voice was hoarse, like sandpaper scraping metal. I frowned. Willow, it's Saturday. I'm sleeping. If you don't come down, I'm not leaving. Suit yourself. I hung up and went back to sleep. About 20 minutes later, a commotion broke out downstairs. People shouting, laughing, even whistling. I got up, walked to the window, and looked down. Willow stood below, holding up a big sign. On it, written in crooked marker, were 4 large characters. George. I was wrong. She wore a wrinkled white t-shirt, her hair tied into a messy ponytail. No makeup. Her eyes were swollen like walnuts. A crowd of neighbors had gathered around her, some filming, some taking pictures, some even live streaming. Damn it, I muttered, throwing on my clothes and rushing downstairs. When I reached the bottom, Willow saw me. Her eyes lit up for a moment, then dimmed again. Why did you come down? She said. Weren't you going to sleep? I sighed. Put the sign down. No, Willow. Not unless you agree to get back together with me. The crowd erupted, people cheering, teasing. Bro, just say yes already. She's amazing. Don't let her go. If you won't, I will. I looked at Willow. She held the sign, her arms trembling slightly, her eyes filled with tears, but stubbornly refusing to let them fall. Sunlight fell across her face, illuminating every fine detail. Come upstairs with me first, I said. She froze for a second, then nodded vigorously, nearly dropping the sign. The crowd broke into warm laughter and applause. I turned and walked upstairs. She followed closely behind, clutching the sign, wearing a mismatched pair of slippers she must have found somewhere, making soft slap-slap sounds as she walked. Inside, she stood by the door, cautiously looking around my tiny 30-square-meter apartment. The damp, peeling walls, the buzzing old air conditioner, the trash can filled with takeout boxes, my computer still glowing on the desk. Sit, I said, pointing to the only chair. She obediently sat down, placing the sign on her knees, hands resting neatly on top, like a skulkid who'd done something wrong. Go ahead, I said, leaning against the window with my arms crossed. Say what? Whatever you want to say. She lowered her head, staring at the sign on her knees, silent for a long time. George, was I really that bad to you before? I didn't answer. I made you fix things, cook late-night meals, Be on call anytime. Her voice grew softer and softer. I never asked if you were willing or tired. I think. I've never even said thank you to you. Her tears fell onto the sign, smudging the ink into a dark blur. I got used to everyone revolving around me. Got used to you being good to me. I thought it was only natural. She looked up at me, her eyes red. Until you left, I realized, it's not. No one is obligated to treat you well. Chapter 8. She stood up, and the sign slipped from her hands, falling to the floor. The chair started squeaking again. She said, last night, I sat on it, and it just kept making noise. I asked maintenance to fix it. They said the screws were loose, that tightening them would solve it. But even after tightening them, it still made noise. And then, I asked. And then I realized, it wasn't the chair making the noise. Her voice trembled. It was me. I was shaking while sitting in that chair, because everywhere around me was filled with traces of you. She took a step closer. You fixed the faucet. You set up the computer. You repaired the car. Even the cup I drink coffee from, you bought it. You said it insulated well, wouldn't burn my hands. She walked right up to me and looked up. George, I never knew one person could leave so much behind in another person's life. Her eyes were so red they looked like they might bleed. Yet her tears still didn't fall. After you left, I couldn't sleep every night. I'd lie in bed, tossing and turning, thinking about every word I said to you this past year. Everything I did. Her voice grew softer. And then I realized. I never once told you that I liked you. Not even once. I thought you understood. She said. I thought you already knew. I did know. I said. She froze. I knew you liked me. I continued. You asked me to fix things, not because you needed a repairman, but because you wanted a reason to keep me by your side. You made me cook late-night meals, not because you were hungry, but because you wanted to see me. You called me in the middle of the night to fix your car, not because it was really broken, but because I talked a bit too much with the new female colleague in my department that day. She stood there, stunned. You knew all of that? She asked. I did. Then why? Because I was tired. I cut her off. Willow, being with you was exhausting. The words hit her like a bucket of ice water, making her shudder. You're used to being above everyone. You never say what you want, you expect others to guess. If I guessed right, I'd get maybe a glance. If I guessed wrong, I'd get days of cold treatment. I'm not an extension of you. I'm a person. I know you're a person. No, you don't. I shook my head. In your eyes, I'm just a function in your life. Something you can activate when needed, and shut off when you're done. When you said we should break up, your tone was no different from when you shut down your computer. Her tears finally fell. I'm sorry, she whispered, crouching down and burying her face in her knees. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I stood in front of her, watching her curl up on the floor. Sunlight streamed in through the window, falling on her trembling shoulders. Willow. I crouched down to her level. You don't need to apologize. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just used to loving someone that way, and I'm not used to being loved like that. She lifted her head, eyes blurred with tears. Then, can you teach me how to love someone? I was silent for a long time. No, I said. The light in her eyes dimmed instantly, like a lamp blown out by the wind, because I haven't learned it either. Saturday afternoon, Willow left my place. She didn't cry or make a scene again. As she reached the door, she turned back and looked at me. George, I won't give up, she said. You said you haven't learned how to love someone. Then I won't learn either. I'll just use my own way to chase you again. The door closed behind her. I stood by the window, watching her walk out of the building and into the July sunlight. She didn't look back. Her posture straightened again. She became that proud Willow once more. Only, she was still holding that sign that said, George, I was wrong. I leaned against the windowsill and lit a cigarette. Outside in the alley, the sound of mahjong tiles being shuffled started up again. Chapter 9. Monday morning, I went to work as usual. When I arrived downstairs at the office building, I noticed a crowd gathered at the entrance. I squeezed in to take a look. A massive flower arrangement was placed at the door, big enough to fit 2 people inside. Hanging on it was a red banner with gold lettering. George, be my boyfriend. Willow. Everyone in the company stood there, staring at me in unison, expressionless. I walked past the flowers and swiped my card to enter. Behind me, a wave of cheers and teasing erupted like a roaring tide. In the elevator, David leaned over, clearly enjoying the drama. George, what the hell is going on? President Lou is chasing you now. No idea. What do you mean, no idea? It's written right there on the banner. Maybe it's a prank. Prank my ass. That's President Lou's official seal on it. I didn't respond. When the elevator reached the 12th floor, I stepped out and saw that my desk was covered in breakfast. Soy milk, fried dough sticks, soup dumplings, jianbing, sandwiches, fruit salad, at least a dozen items, filling my 80-centimeter desk to the brim. Each one had a sticky note on it, written in Willow's handwriting. Didn't know what you like, so I got a bit of everything. I peeled off the notes and distributed the food to my coworkers. They ate while teasing me nonstop. George, Just accept President Liu already. Seriously, this level of effort, I'm jealous. I ignored them, turned on my computer, and started working. At 10 in the morning, a company-wide announcement popped up on the internal system, effective immediately. George from the IT department is promoted to technical director, salary doubled. Willow. The entire 12th floor exploded. David was the first to rush over, eyes wide like bells. Holy shit, George, you got promoted to director. I stared at the announcement for 3 seconds, then picked up the desk phone and dialed Willow's office. She answered after 2 rings. Hello. There was a hint of smugness in her voice. Take down the announcement, I said. Why? I don't need it, but your skills are more than enough to be a director. Willow. There was a brief silence on the other end before she said, do you think I promoted you just because I want to chase you? Isn't that the case? I asked. George. Her voice suddenly turned serious. The system vulnerability you fixed last month saved the company from a potential loss of 13 million. You didn't know that, did you? This time, it was my turn to fall silent. I've read every technical report you've written, every project you've done, every problem you've solved. I know all of it. She said softly. Promoting you is because you deserve it. It has nothing to do with chasing you. Got it. Then I won't take down the announcement. I hung up. When I looked up, the entire IT department was staring at me. What are you looking at? I said flatly. Get back to work. At lunch, the cafeteria menu suddenly became unusually extravagant. Crayfish, grilled lamb chops, seafood platters, all premium dishes. The cafeteria lady smiled at me and said, President Liu said from now on, the cafeteria standard is doubled. She'll personally cover the extra cost. I took my tray and found a corner seat. After a couple of bites, someone sat down across from me. Willow. She carried a tray with the exact same dishes as mine. No seats left, she said. I glanced around at the many empty seats. At least a third of the cafeteria was vacant, but didn't call her out. She lowered her head and ate slowly. She had never eaten in the cafeteria before. Her assistant always brought her meals to her office. Is it good? She asked. Yeah, that's good. Chapter 10. After a few moments of silent eating, she suddenly put down her chopsticks and looked at me seriously. George, I know you don't like me trying to win you over with money, the flowers and the breakfast. I just wanted you to know I'm serious. The promotion is because you truly deserve it, and the cafeteria upgrade is because you once said the food there tasted awful. After saying that, she lowered her head again, poking at the rice in her bowl with her chopsticks. You don't need to feel pressured, she said softly. I just want to treat you well. You don't have to respond, and you don't have to feel like you owe me anything. People came and went in the cafeteria, some glancing over at us from time to time, watching Willow absent-mindedly poke at her food. I suddenly remembered a moment from a year ago. Back then, we had just gotten together. One night, we worked late, and her stomach started hurting from hunger. I searched the entire office and only found a pack of instant noodles. I made it and handed it to her. She took one bite, frowned, and said it tasted awful. Then she finished the entire bowl. After eating, she wiped her mouth and said, George, from now on, you'll cook for me every day. I laughed and said okay, and later, I really did cook for her every day. Willow, I called. She looked up. The cafeteria food really is better than before. Her eyes lit up instantly, like someone had sparked a star inside them. At 6 in the evening, I got off work on time. As I walked out of the building, I saw that silver-gray Maybach parked at the entrance again. Willow leaned against the car door, holding a cup of coffee. When she saw me, she walked over and handed it to me. The temperature's just right. 1.5 spoons of sugar, 1/3 milk, she said. The way you used to make it for me, I remembered. I took the coffee and had a sip. Well, she asked. Her eyes filled with both anticipation and nervousness. Too sweet, I said. Her expression instantly fell, but I took another sip. It's drinkable. Her eyes lit up again. I'll put less sugar tomorrow, she said. I'll bring you another one. She turned and walked toward her car. Then after a few steps, turned back and waved at me. George, see you tomorrow. The setting sun stretched her shadow long behind her. Her smile, bathed in golden light, was almost too beautiful. I stood there holding the overly sweet coffee, watching as she drove away. A colleague passing by muttered, George, how long is President Liu planning to chase you? I took another sip of the coffee. No idea, but I didn't throw it away. Chapter 11. Willow's pursuit lasted for an entire month. Every morning, she would leave a cup of coffee on my desk. The temperature was just right, and the sugar kept decreasing, from overly sweet to just right. Every noon, she would carry her tray and sit across from me, eating the same dishes I did. Sometimes she'd say a few words. Sometimes she'd just eat quietly. Every evening, she would wait for me at the entrance of the office building, hand me a cup of coffee, and say, see you tomorrow. She stopped sending flower arrangements. She stopped pulling banners. She stopped making a big show of things. She simply used the clumsiest way possible. bit by bit, to tell me she was learning how to treat me well, in the way I liked. The company gossip slowly cooled down from boiling to room temperature. People got used to seeing President Lou appear in the cafeteria every day, got used to seeing her wait for George at the entrance every day. Some even started placing bets on when George would finally give in. I said nothing. I still drank the coffee, still ate the meals. When she waited for me, I would walk over as usual and take the coffee from her. But the word, getting back together, I never mentioned it once. One Friday night, a month later, I worked overtime until past 9. When I walked out of the office, the entire building was almost empty. I reached the entrance and found Willow still standing there, holding a cup of coffee. The 9 o'clock night wind blew past, messing her hair slightly. She wrapped her suit jacket tightly around herself, and the high heels on her feet had been replaced with flats. I asked, "How long have you been waiting?" "Not long," she said. I took the coffee and had a sip. It was warm, not freshly made warm, but the kind of warmth that comes from sitting for a long time, slightly cooled. "What time did you start waiting?" She hesitated, then said, 6, 3 hours. "Willow, if I worked until midnight, would you wait until midnight too?" Are you out of your mind?" She froze for a moment, then lowered her head. In a very soft voice, she said, "Yeah, I am. I've got a condition, it's called missing George." The night wind rustled the plane tree leaves along the street. I looked at her lowered profile, the streetlight outlining her features in a soft glow. "Let's go. I'll take you home," I said. She lifted her head, her eyes bright. "You'll take me?" I said. "You waited 3 hours. I'll give you a ride, call it even." She smiled. The smile was faint, like a night blooming flower quietly opening in the dark. We walked side by side through the night. When we passed a convenience store, she suddenly stopped. "George, I want some Odin," I asked. "Don't you never eat street food?" I didn't before, now I do. I walked into the convenience store, bought 2 portions of Odin, and we sat on the bench outside. She carefully took a bite of fish tofu, only to inhale sharply from the heat. "Is it good?" I asked. "It's good." Her eyes curved like crescents. "How did I never know Odin was this delicious?" "Because you used to be President Lou." Her chewing paused for a moment, then she slowly swallowed. "I still am President Lou," she said softly, "but I can also be a President Lou who eats Odin." I didn't respond. The neon lights of the night market flickered in the distance. The convenience store lights cast our shadows long across the ground. "George," she suddenly said, "do you remember the first time we met?" I nodded. Chapter 12. That was 2 years ago. My 3rd day at Orange. New employee onboarding for the IT department was held in a conference room on the 16th floor. When Willow pushed the door open and walked in, everyone stood up, except me. Not because I had some kind of backbone. I was squatting under the table fixing the projector. She walked in from the doorway, her high heels clicking crisply against the floor. Then she stopped by the conference table and glanced down at me crouching on the ground. "What are you doing?" "Fixing the projector," I replied. "You're from IT?" "Yeah," she said. "Come report to me after you fix it." Then she turned and left. Later, I fixed the projector and went to her office to report in. She sat in that boss chair, sizing me up from head to toe. "From now on, anything in the company that breaks, you handle it." "Yes, President Lou." That was how our story began. Willow Lou said, "Back then, when I told you to come to my office," she chewed on a knot of kelp, speaking a little unclearly, "it wasn't actually because you could fix things." "Then why?" She glanced at me, then looked away, staring at the cup of Odin in her hands. She said, "Because the way you looked when you were focused on fixing something was really handsome." I almost choked on a fish ball. "Willow, you had your eye on me since then?" "No." Her face flushed red, clearly visible under the streetlight. "It's just, you were different from everyone else. Everyone else looked at me like I was a tiger. But you, there you were, crouching on the floor tightening screws, not even looking at me." I said speechlessly, "I did look." She said, "You didn't." I looked out of the corner of my eye. She froze for a second, then burst out laughing. That was the first time I had seen her laugh like that since we broke up. Not a polite smile, not a restrained one, but a genuine, unguarded laugh from the heart. Her eyes curved into crescents, the tip of her nose wrinkling slightly, revealing a row of neat white teeth. "Beautiful." "George," she said, collecting herself and looking at me seriously, "what did you see out of the corner of your eye?" I said, "A woman with a terrible temper." "Just that." I also saw she was wearing a pair of high heels that didn't fit. She froze. "You had bandages on your heels," I said. "I saw it in a glance." She lowered her head, staring at the tips of her shoes. She said softly, "Those were new shoes. They rubbed." I had meetings all day, and by the end, I had 2 blisters on my heels. When I got home and took them off, the bandages had stuck to my socks. When I pulled them off, it hurt so much I cried. "You never told me." "Because I'm President Lou." She lifted her head to look at me, Her eyes slightly red. President Lou can't hurt. President Lou can't cry. President Lou can't say her high heels don't fit. But George, President Lou is human too. She stood up and threw the empty Odin cup into the trash. Take me home, she said. I walked her to the entrance of her residential complex. She stood at the gate, not going in right away. George, thank you for being with me tonight. No need. She hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, rising onto her toes, and gently kissed my cheek. Her lips touched my face for less than a second, like a feather landing on water. Good night. Then she turned and ran, her heels tapping rapidly against the ground. Like a startled rabbit, I stood under the streetlight, the warmth of her lips still lingering on my cheek. Then I smiled, just a little. Chapter 13. After that, my relationship with Willow entered a subtle state of balance. Not lovers, but not just ordinary friends either. Every day, she brought me coffee. At noon, she ate with me. In the evening, she waited for me at the company entrance. I accepted everything as it came, neither rejecting nor taking initiative. David said I was stringing her along, that it wasn't right. I said I wasn't stringing her along, I was waiting. He asked, waiting for what? For the day she stops being so careful. David didn't understand, and I didn't explain. Willow's attitude toward me had changed, from the dramatic, over-the-top way she acted after the breakup to the cautious, careful way she was now. She was afraid of saying the wrong thing, afraid of doing the wrong thing, afraid that one misstep would push me away again. Watching that carefulness, it didn't sit well with me. That Willow, the one who stood high above, commanding and unapologetic, shouldn't have to live like this, not even for me. The turning point came one weekend in October. I took on a side job, building a security system for a startup, and spent both days in their server room. Somehow, Willow found out. Early Saturday morning, she showed up at the company entrance, carrying a thermal bag. I asked, how did you know I was here? I asked David. She handed me the bag. You definitely haven't eaten breakfast. Inside was a serving of preserved egg and lean pork congee, a portion of pan-fried dumplings, and a cup of coffee at just the right temperature. I sat in a corner of the server room eating breakfast, while she sat quietly beside me, watching me eat. Don't you need to go to the company? I asked. Today's Saturday. You used to work overtime on Saturdays too. That was before. This is now. I took a sip of the congee. Warm, not scalding. The preserved egg was finely chopped. The pork minced small. It didn't look store-bought. You made this yourself? I asked. Her face flushed slightly. Yeah. When did you learn to cook? This past month. Willow lowered her head, picking at her nails. The dumplings are frozen ones I bought. The congee, I made it myself. First time. It might not taste very good. I took another sip. Honestly, it tasted average. Too thick, not enough salt, and the preserved egg had a slight off taste. But I finished every last bite. Is it good? She asked, looking at me expectantly. It's okay, I replied. Her eyes lit up for a second, then quickly dimmed. She said, when you say okay, you mean it's not that good. I paused. So she had learned to read between my lines. For a first try, it's already very good, I said. The corner of her lips curved slightly, just a little. In the afternoon, something went wrong in the server room, and I was so busy my feet barely touched the ground. Willow sat quietly in a chair in the corner, looking at her phone, occasionally glancing up at me. It wasn't until 8 in the evening that I finally fixed the problem. While packing up my tools, I noticed Willow had fallen asleep against the chair. Her phone had slipped onto her lap. The screen was still on. It was her chat with her assistant. It read, President Lou, should we postpone the 3 p.m. meeting? Cancel it. What about tomorrow mornings? Cancel that too. I won't be in the company this weekend. Message me if anything comes up. I crouched in front of her, watching her sleeping face. Her eyelashes were long, casting a small shadow. Her lips were slightly pressed together, and there was a faint crease between her brows. Even in sleep, she hadn't fully relaxed. She used to sleep like this too, brows always slightly furrowed, as if she were still handling some difficult case even in her dreams. I reached out and gently pressed the crease between her brows with my fingertip. Her brows twitched, then slowly relaxed. George, she murmured vaguely, as if in a dream. I withdrew my hand, stood up, and draped my jacket over her. Let's go. I'll take you home, I said. Chapter 14. She groggily opened her eyes and rubbed them, like a cat that had just woken up. What time is it? She asked. 8:30. Ah. She snapped, fully awake. You haven't had dinner yet. I'm not hungry. No, you have to eat. She stood up, her jacket slipping off her shoulders. I know a noodle place nearby that's really good. I'll take you. She grabbed my wrist and pulled me outside. I glanced down at the wrist she was holding, but didn't pull away. The noodle shop was tucked in an old alley. The storefront was small, with only 5 or 6 tables. The owner was an elderly woman in her 60s. When she saw Willow, she smiled. Willow, you're here again. Willow said. Aunt Chen. 2 bowls of beef noodles, one with extra cilantro. No scallions. and one regular. She remembered I didn't eat scallions. The noodles arrived, steaming hot. She picked up slices of beef from her bowl one by one and placed them into mine. I asked, "What are you doing?" "I don't like beef," she said. "Liar. Last time we had hot pot, you ordered 3 plates of beef." She froze for a moment, then said quietly, "That was last time." I picked the beef back into her bowl. "Eat." She looked at me, something swirling in her eyes. "George, can you not be this good to me?" "Me, good to you?" I let out a small laugh. "Willow, you're the one chasing me now. You're the one being good to me. Then why won't you eat my beef?" "Because you like it." Her tears fell instantly, dropping into the bowl of noodles, splashing tiny droplets of oil. People at the next table glanced over. "Willow, eat your noodles," I said, lowering my head and eating mine without looking at her. She wiped her tears, lowered her head, and ate quietly, bite by bite. Halfway through, she suddenly said, "George, it would have been better if I'd been like this earlier." "Like what?" "Like now. If I want to cry, I cry. If I want to eat street food, I eat it. If I like you, I say it. No pretending, no holding back." She finished all the noodles in her bowl, even drinking the soup clean. I used to think that as President Liu, I couldn't bow my head, couldn't show weakness, couldn't let anyone see my vulnerabilities. She set down the bowl and looked at me. "But after you left, I realized my biggest weakness is you." The dim light in the noodle shop softened her face. "George, I won't force you. Whenever you're willing to come back, I'll be here." After we left the noodle shop, I walked her home. When we reached the entrance of her residential complex, she didn't kiss me like last time. She just stood there and waved at me. "Good night, good night." I turned and walked a few steps when she suddenly called out, "George." I turned back. "Tomorrow morning, I'll still bring you coffee." Under the streetlight, her smile was faint, but her eyes were bright. I nodded, then turned and disappeared into the night. Something inside me quietly loosened. Chapter 15. The final straw came without warning. One Wednesday in November, something went wrong at Orange Group. The company's core database was hit by ransomware. All data was encrypted, and the attackers demanded a ransom of $50 million. From 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., the IT department worked non-stop, but made no progress. The entire company fell into paralysis. All systems were down, all files inaccessible, all business operations halted. Calls from the board came one after another into Willow's office. The shareholders spoke harshly, demanding she resolve the issue immediately. At 4 p.m., Willow convened an emergency meeting. The conference room was packed. Department heads, technical backbones, legal, PR, an overwhelming crowd. Willow sat at the head of the table, her face ashen. The newly appointed IT director wiped his sweat and said, "The attackers used a new type of ransomware. There's currently no decryption tool available on the market. Our backup system was also infected. Backups from 3 days ago are completely corrupted. Only offline backups from a week ago are usable." She asked, "How much can we recover from a week ago?" "About 60%. All business data from this past week will be lost. Estimated losses exceed 80 million. The air in the room froze. 80 million, enough to send Orange's stock price crashing to the bottom. Is there no other solution? Willow's voice was low. The director replied, "We've contacted 3 data recovery companies. They all said it would take at least a week, and they can't guarantee full recovery." A week. In a week, Orange might not even exist anymore. No one dared to respond. At that moment, the conference room door burst open. David rushed in, panting. "President Liu, George asked me to tell you, he can fix it." All eyes turned to David. Willow shot to her feet. "Where is he?" "Server room on the 12th floor. He's been there for 6 hours already." People in the room exchanged looks. A former low-level IT employee, coming to save the day. Willow didn't hesitate. She strode out in her heels. "I got David's call at 8 in the morning. He said the company database had been hacked and no one could do anything." I hung up, grabbed my coat, and headed out. When I arrived, the IT department was running around like headless flies. I went straight into the server room, shut the door, and got to work. The ransomware's encryption algorithm was complex, but not unsolvable. I dealt with this kind of virus before. Last year, I handled a similar case for a client. For 6 hours, I sat in front of the computer, my fingers barely stopping. Lines of code scrolled across the screen. My eyes burned like sand had gotten into them. My wrists ached like they were about to snap, but I didn't stop. When the server room door opened, I was writing the final part of the decryption script. "George." I didn't turn around. "Don't disturb me." Footsteps stopped behind me, then silence. My fingers flew across the keyboard. After finishing the last line of code, I hit enter. A progress bar appeared on the screen. 1%, 5%, 10%. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and let out a long breath. When the bar reached 100%, a line of green text popped up. "Decryption successful. The database was restored. All the data, intact." I opened my eyes and turned around. Willow stood behind me, looking at me, her eyes so red they looked like they might bleed. "It's done," I said. "All the data's recovered." She didn't look at the screen, she just looked at me. "You stayed here for 6 hours. About that. Why didn't you tell me?" "Wouldn't have helped. You don't know how to code anyway." Her lips trembled. Tears streamed down her face. "George, why would you do this? Didn't you say you were done with me? Didn't you leave? Then why come back?" I stood up and stretched my aching wrists. "Because your company was about to collapse. What does that have to do with you?" "It has everything to do with you." She froze, tears clinging to her lashes, forgetting to fall. The servers hummed in the background, indicator lights flickering endlessly. "Willow," I looked into her eyes. "This past month, you brought me coffee every day, ate with me every day, waited for me at the company entrance every day. You think I didn't know how many times you burned your hands learning to cook? You think I didn't know how many social engagements you canceled just to sit with me in the cafeteria? You think I didn't know you moved your office to the 12th floor meeting room just because you could see my desk from there?" Chapter 16. She was completely stunned. Willow's mouth fell open. "Wait, you knew all of that?" I let out a light laugh. "I told you, whenever you want something, you never say it. But everything you do, I can see." I stepped forward and said calmly. "You asked why I came back. Because this damn company was left to you by your father. Because it's something you fought to protect for 5 years. Because if it disappears, you'll cry." "I won't." "You will." I cut her off. "You cried over a pair of ill-fitting heels. Don't tell me you wouldn't cry over orange." She bit her lip, trying hard to hold back her tears, but they still fell anyway. I said, "Willow, you used to order me around, treat me like I should always be at your beck and call, and take my feelings for granted." I remember all of that. The light in her eyes dimmed, like a flame being extinguished. "But," I continued, "everything you've done this past month, I remember that too." She lifted her head, and the light returned to her eyes. Her voice trembled. "So you mean?" I didn't say anything. I walked past her toward the server room door without looking back. "Go deal with your company first. If the stock drops any further, your $50 million annual salary might not even get paid next year." She burst into laughter through her tears and followed behind me like a little tail. In the hallway, the company's executives stood in a line. When they saw me come out, they all started applauding. David was the first to rush over, slapping my shoulder hard. "George, I knew you could do it." He nearly knocked me sideways. "Easy. My wrist still hurts." Willow immediately stepped forward and brushed David's hand away. "His wrist hurts. Don't touch him." David froze for a moment, then gave a meaningful smile. "Oh, got it. President Lou." Willow's face flushed instantly, from the tips of her ears down to her neck. That night, Willow opened a bottle of red wine in her office. After the data was restored, the company systems came back online, the stock price stabilized, and the board finally quieted down. The tension she had been holding all day finally released. She leaned back on the sofa, looking like all the strength had drained from her body. "George, thank you." She held a wine glass, her eyes still shimmering slightly from the alcohol. "No need. Can you stop saying 'no need' every time?" "What should I say then?" She set down the glass and looked at me seriously. "You can say, 'I want to.'" Outside the window, the CBD was lit up with dazzling lights. Those brilliant lights streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting mottled shadows across her face. I stayed silent for a long time. Then I stood up, walked over to her, and looked down at her. "Willow, lift your head." She raised her head, my reflection visible in her eyes. I said, "From now on, if you want something, say it directly. Don't make me guess." She froze for a second, then nodded vigorously. I paused, then continued, "From now on, you're not allowed to treat me like some on-call repairman." She nodded again. I took a deep breath and said slowly, "From now on, you're not allowed to say you're tired of me." Tears surged into her eyes. She nodded desperately, like a pecking chick. "And," I bent down so we were at eye level, "if your shoes don't fit, tell me. If your heels get blistered, tell me. If it hurts, say it hurts. If you want to cry, then cry in front of me. You don't have to be President Lou." Her tears fell like a string of broken pearls, one after another. "George," her voice choked, barely able to form words. "Are you saying, Willow, let's start over?" She threw herself into my arms, knocking me back a step, her face buried in my chest. She cried uncontrollably, her whole body trembling, like a child who had suffered so much and was finally comforted. Chapter 17. I hesitated for a moment, then raised my hand and placed it on the back of her head. "Stop crying. Your makeup's going to smudge," I said. "I'm not wearing makeup." Her muffled voice came from my chest. "Then go ahead and cry." She cried even harder. Outside the window, the city lights glittered, and traffic flowed endlessly below. I held Willow in my arms. Standing in her office on the 42nd floor, that boss chair sat quietly in the corner, no longer making a sound. The first weekend after we got back together, Willow moved into my rented apartment. More precisely, she showed up with a suitcase and moved in by force. I asked, "You're not staying in that big flat of yours anymore?" I leaned against the doorframe, watching her take things out of her suitcase one by one. "It's too big. Feels empty living there alone." I frowned. "That still doesn't mean you have to move in here. 30 square meters, you'll bump into a wall just turning around." She stood up, hands on her hips, and looked around. The damp stain in the corner of the wall was still there. The old air conditioner still hummed loudly. The trash can was still full of takeout boxes. On my computer screen, the Steam interface was still open. "It's nice," she said. "What's nice about it? Your walk-in closet is bigger than this place." "George." She turned around and looked at me seriously. "It's not about how big it is. What matters is, you're here." That left me momentarily speechless. "When did you learn to say things like that?" I asked. "From you." She smiled, then went back to unpacking. She placed her skincare products in front of my chipped mirror, hung her suits in my tiny wardrobe, and set her laptop beside mine. The 30 square meter apartment suddenly felt cramped, and suddenly, full. That night, I took her to the street-side food stall downstairs. She was wearing one of my white t-shirts, sleeves rolled up to her elbows, denim shorts, and flip-flops, no makeup at all. Her hair was tied into a simple ponytail. When the stall owner saw her, she froze for a moment, then asked me, "George, is this your girlfriend?" "Yeah." The owner sized Willow up and down, clicking her tongue in admiration. "She's really pretty, like a celebrity." Willow smiled, her eyes curving. "Thank you." We ordered stir-fried clams, grilled eggplant, grilled chicken wings, and 2 bottles of beer. Willow copied me, grabbing a chicken wing with her hands and biting into it. Oil dripped from the corner of her mouth as she scrambled to find a napkin. "Slow down. No one's stealing it from you," I said, handing her one. "How did I never know chicken wings could taste this good?" She mumbled, her mouth still full, "Because before, you only ate chicken wings cut with a knife and fork in fancy restaurants." She swallowed and thought about it seriously. "You're right. The ones at fancy restaurants really aren't as good as this." The night breeze blew through, messing up the loose strands of hair on her forehead. She wiped the oil from her mouth with the back of her hand, then picked up her beer and clinked it against mine. "Cheers." "Cheers." Foam spilled over the rim of the glass, running down the sides. She tilted her head back and took a big gulp, then frowned. "Bitter. Beer is supposed to be bitter, but I like it." She took another sip, then set the glass down and stared at the streetlights in the distance. "George, why do people change?" "Because they meet someone who makes them want to change." She turned to look at me, the lights flickering in her eyes. "Then, am I that person?" "What do you think?" She smiled, fine lines forming at the corners of her eyes. "George, I've noticed, you've gotten better at saying nice things. Learned it from you." She rested her head on my shoulder, lightly, like a leaf settling on water. "Then from now on, we'll learn from each other." Chapter 18. In December, at Orange Group's annual gala, Willow did something that shocked everyone. Midway through the event, the host invited Willow on stage to give a speech. She walked up in a red evening gown, the spotlight falling on her like a blazing flame. "Everyone," Willow said, "this year marks the 20th anniversary of Orange. Over these 20 years, we've gone through many storms and achieved many successes." She paused, her gaze sweeping across everyone in the audience, then continued. "But for me, the most special thing this year isn't how much our performance has grown, nor how many major clients we've secured. It's," her eyes found me, sitting in the corner. "I lost someone, and then I found him again." The entire room fell silent. A lot of people have asked me, "Willow, you're a CEO worth billions. Why would you chase after an ordinary employee? Isn't that embarrassing?" She smiled. I told them, "It's not embarrassing because that person is worth it." People in the audience started to cheer and tease. "George," she said into the microphone, her voice echoing through the banquet hall, "I know you're down there. The heels I'm wearing today are 12 centimeters high. I've got 2 bandages on my heels. It really hurts." Everyone turned to look at me. She lifted her chin. "But I'm not afraid of the pain, because I've finally learned, if it hurts, I say it hurts." She took a deep breath. "George, I love you. Not President Lou loving George, Willow loving George. Will you come up here and give me a hug?" The entire hall exploded. Whistles, applause, cheers. It was deafening. I stood up, walked through the crowd, and stepped onto the stage. The lights were blinding. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on us. Willow stood at the center of the stage, her red gown like fire, her eyes shining like stars. "Do your feet really hurt?" I asked. "They really do." I crouched down and took off her high heels. She stood barefoot on the stage, a bit shorter than me now, looking up at me. "George, you haven't answered me yet." "Answered what?" "I said I love you. What about you?" I looked at her, at the anticipation and nervousness in her eyes, at her slightly trembling lips. Then I bent down and lifted her into my arms. She let out a small cry, her arms instinctively wrapping around my neck. The crowd erupted into thunderous cheers. "Willow," I said softly by her ear, holding her. "Don't wear shoes that don't fit anymore." Her eyes reddened. "Can't you just say the words?" "What words?" "You know exactly what I mean." "I don't." "George." I lowered my head and gently pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I love you, now you know." She buried her face in my chest and gave a muffled mm. The cheers from the crowd nearly lifted the roof off the hall. David let out a loud whistle from the crowd and started clapping first. I carried Willow off the stage, through the celebrating crowd, and out of the banquet hall. The hallway was quiet, with only distant music and cheers echoing faintly. "George," she said softly in my arms, "where are you taking me?" "Home." "Which home?" "Our home." She pressed her face against my chest, listening to my heartbeat. Okay. Chapter 19. In the autumn 1 year later, Orange Group moved into its new headquarters building. 46 floors, 4 floors taller than before. Willow's office was on the top floor, and outside the floor-to-ceiling windows stretched the entire city skyline. Her executive chair had been replaced with a new one. It no longer creaked, because the person who used to fix the chair was now sitting on the sofa across from her. I quit my job in the IT department and started my own cybersecurity company. My office was in the building right next to Orange, and from her office window, Willow could see mine. "George." She leaned back in her chair, legs crossed, looking at me with a half-smile. "What are we eating tonight?" "You're cooking." "Why me again?" "Because I cooked yesterday. I'm not good at it." "Still gotta do it." She pouted, picked up her phone, and started scrolling through recipes. Sunlight streamed in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, falling across her face. She wore a white shirt, sleeves rolled up to her elbows, her hair loose and casual. No makeup, no high heels, no custom-tailored suit, but no matter how I looked at her, she was beautiful. "What are you staring at?" she asked without lifting her head. "You." The tips of her ears turned red. "It's been a year already." "Still not tired of looking?" "Not even close." She put down her phone, stood up, walked around the desk, and came over to me. Then she bent down and lightly pecked my lips. She said, "Then you can look for a lifetime." Outside the window, the city shimmered under the autumn sun. The streets below bustled with traffic and people coming and going. I reached out and pulled her into my arms. Catching the faint fragrance of her hair, I said, "Deal."